AFR Talk. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, you can be among the first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Don't forget Truth for a New Generation conference coming up in September 5 and 6 at Spartanburg, South Carolina. You can pre-register by going to truthforanewgeneration.com. This is a premier conference on apologetics and Christian worldview. American Family Association co-sponsoring this. Going to be hosted by our good friend Alex McFarland. You're about ready to hear him on Exploring the Word along with Bert Harper. And this is really aimed at the millennial generation to teach them about God, to teach them about Christianity, to give them reasons for their faith, the ability to defend their faith, and in this conference in particular, to focus on the Christian origins of America. The title of the conference is Life and Liberty Given by God. Again, go to truthforanewgeneration.com. A lot of great speakers. Todd Starnes from Fox News will be there. Dr. Ben Carson, Eric Metaxas, David Barton, our own Tim Wildman, president of AFA, will be there. Josh McDowell, Johnny Erickson Tata, and many, many more. That's truthforanewgeneration.com. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Let's grab soundbite number 4. One of the things that has happened that a lot of people haven't really paid attention to is the number of times that President Obama has been completely shut down, been completely slapped down by the Supreme Court. Now, the most recent case, yesterday, the Supreme Court issued a ruling saying that his recess appointment, or this actually happened, I think, on Wednesday, that his recess appointments were unconstitutional. What had happened is President Obama had nominees to the National Labor Relations Board, a pro-union outfit, that were so radical, so extreme, that he knew he could not get them through the Senate, even a divided Senate, even with Democrats being in the majority. And so he used what he called a power of recess appointment. While the Senate was home for Christmas, he appointed these guys. Now, the Senate was run by the Democrats at the time. Even Harry Reid didn't want to give him a chance to do this. So he only recessed the Senate for 3 days, and the Constitution is very, very clear on this, that recess appointments are only for vacancies that occur during a recess. Now, by recess, according to the Constitution, this means when the legislature, the Congress and House of Representatives, have finished their work and they have adjourned for the season. So it's not a Christmas break or a Thanksgiving break or a summer break. It's when they are done with that session of Congress. And if a vacancy occurs while Congress is in recess and you need the functions of government to continue, then the president has the capacity to appoint someone if the vacancy occurs during the recess. He can appoint an emergency appointment so that whatever functions of government need to continue can continue. Well, President Obama was abusing this privilege, and the Supreme Court slapped him down. And this is now the 13th time, 13 times President Obama has been shut down by a unanimous Supreme Court, 9-0. And it happened again. Now, here is Jonathan Turley, clip 4. Jonathan Turley is a liberal. He's a law professor at George Washington University. That number again, by the way, is 888-589-8840. And Jonathan Turley is often brought on these cable programs to be a talking head on constitutional issues. He's considered by everybody to be an expert. He agrees with President Obama. He voted for President Obama. Philosophically, he is aligned with President Obama. But now he's observing the fact that 13 different times the Supreme Court has slapped his hand unanimously, 9-0, even the liberals on the court, saying to President Obama, look, you have exceeded your authority on this issue. And here's what Jonathan Turley said this all means.
Well, it was a fascinating decision. You know, I testified at the hearing, the Judiciary Committee hearing, after the appointments were made. And I testified at that time that I believe they were flagrantly unconstitutional. You know, there are close questions, as I said to the committee, in constitutional law, but this was not one of them. And I'm still astonished that the Obama administration litigated this case. They abandoned a long principle of past presidents not to push these to final decisions. This decision today wiped out decades of efforts by prior presidents to try to increase their authority in this area. It's a major, major loss. But it's the right decision. And at the end of the day, it means that the president again violated the separation of powers. And this is becoming something of a serial violation for the president. You know, what the president did here, I can't imagine any competent lawyer would look at it and say, yes, you do have that authority. It was clearly an effort to circumvent. And what's interesting, Sean, is that there's a little paragraph in this long 100-page opinion that has been overlooked. The paragraph from the court says that this clause is not there for branches to work around other branches. It essentially was a veiled reference to this concept of going it alone. The court said there's a clear purpose to this clause. It's not there to be used effectively as a weapon. And I think that's a shot across the bow in a lot of these different areas.
So this is Jonathan Turley saying, look, this recess appointment clause, it's not there to provide some kind of end run around the separation of powers. It's there for a purpose so that necessary functions of government can continue in case somebody dies while Congress is not around to approve his successor. That's what it's there for. It's not to give you a way to circumvent the doctrine of the separation of powers. And Jonathan Turley, this guy is a hardcore leftist. He says, look, these recess appointments were flagrantly unconstitutional. President again violated the separation of powers. This is becoming something of a serial violation for the president. He is routinely, serially violating the separation of powers. It was clearly an effort to circumvent. And so Jonathan Turley, this leftist, I mean, he's becoming alarmed at this go-it-alone mentality of the president, and the president slapped down again. Now, clip number 5, this IRS issue continues to boil up. It turns out that Lois Lerner sent some of these emails from her BlackBerry, and that could be the Achilles heel because you can go after those BlackBerry emails. So that's the next issue that's going to be pursued. Where's that BlackBerry? Where are those BlackBerry emails? Can we get to them through her BlackBerry or through the BlackBerry servers? So that is the next thing that's going to be looked at. Now, a liberal by the name of Sam Stein is on a panel, and they're talking about the softball questions that have been asked by Democrats in these IRS scandals and these other scandals. Here's how the exchange went.
But Democrats, Sam, are asking questions. And
I think actually Mark's right on this one. The Democrats.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Thank you.
Is that possible?
It pains me to say it, buddy. No, I think, and you look at these oversight hearings, for instance, there haven't been the type of inquisitive questions from the Democratic side of the ledger about exactly what transpired. They've been mostly focused on the budgeting for IT at these departments, which is not the same issue.
And it's not.
So the Democrats are trying to get this off on budgeting, whereas the Republicans are concerned about the substantive issues of the trashing of emails, obstruction of justice, the prosecution, harassment of Tea Party groups. One last step before we go to the phones. This is Lanny Davis. Now, Lanny Davis was a counselor for the Clintons. This guy's another hardcore leftist, and he said, look, this IRS stuff, it even has a stench about it to him as a hardcore Democratic operative and leftist. Here's what he had to say.
But if this were a Republican administration, I'd be saying when hard drives have been obliterated and this recent Lois Lerner, I think, very inappropriate, maybe innocent, but still completely inappropriate. Maybe we should look at Mrs. Grassley. There's no Democrat that I know of that wouldn't be asking a Republican administration to conduct an independent investigation.
So independent investigation called for, and the mention of Grassley, Lois Lerner tried to get an audit launched against Chuck Grassley because his wife received an invitation to a charitable dinner. And she got it by accident. She wanted to launch an IRS audit of Senator Chuck Grassley, who had been poking into what the IRS had been doing for 5 years. She didn't like it. she decided she was going to strike back by launching an audit against Chuck Grassley. Did not get anywhere with that idea. Let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Eric in Southwest Missouri. Eric, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Fire strikes back. Well, a lot, Brian. First, let me say that I love your program.
Thank you, sir.
It's a blessing to me, big time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and may God continue to bless you. Even though you and I have some really interesting theological differences, hey, you're my brother.
Amen to that, brother.
And I love you. Look, I want to clarify something. First, let me say regarding the race in Mississippi, it is rather sickening. It makes one sick to the stomach to know of the shenanigans that went on there and just how that power-hungry men will do anything to keep their power, which points to a systemic problem we have, which is way too much power is vested in D.C. But there's a point of the law in Mississippi that I really want you to clarify for me, and maybe some of the other listeners. I've heard you talk about how individuals there who have voted one way or the other have broken the law, and I really don't understand how. In other words, if they're demos and they voted in the Republican primary or vice versa, and they voted in one election and then they couldn't do it in another, but there was no way to keep track of whether this was happening or not. Am I making sense here, Brian?
Yeah, I'm following you.
Okay, so if you would, please explain to me what the law is in Mississippi so I can fully comprehend it. Second of all, let me just say this. If I were a Mississippian, I'll assure you that I would be writing in Mr. McDaniel's name. And so, anyway, truth has not prevailed at this time, but ultimately we know it will. So, anyway, I'm sorry for him, and I pray that maybe God would bring about some mechanism to see to it that justice was done there and that the one who should have won that election would. So I'm going to hang up now, and I'll listen to your explanation of Mississippi law regarding.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. One quick thing on the write-in thing. I checked with the election office in the state of Mississippi. They do not count write-in votes in November. This is an odd thing to me because there's a write-in line there, and the election official said, yeah, you can write in a candidate in November. We got a line there for you to write in, but we don't count the votes. They don't count. Your vote won't get registered. It won't get tallied. It won't get counted. And I said, well, what is that write-in line in there for? And she said, well, that's in case one of the two candidates that's on the ballot dies. If one of those candidates dies between the time we print the ballots and the election, you can write in a replacement candidate for the guy that dies. That's what it's there for. Well, a lot of people aren't going to know that. And I'll tell you, I frankly suspect a lot of Tea Partiers, a lot of conservatives, even if they know that their vote for Chris McDaniel isn't going to count, they're going to write his name in anyway as a protest vote. Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.
If you're looking for information on what's happening in the culture war and how it will impact your family, you can spend hours searching online and you still may not get the full story. There are some things that media outlets just won't tell you. Save yourself some time and frustration and stop by afa.net. When you do, you'll be instantly connected to up-to-the-minute information and resources to help you protect your family and friends against the growing immorality in America. Take some time and see what you'll find. You may be surprised. afa.net.
Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association, on the film Alone Yet Not Alone.
I was really impressed. I've seen the film twice, and this is a movie you can take your whole family to see.
Alone Yet Not Alone is the true story of a pioneer Christian family of unshakable faith.
No matter how hard the trial,